All right, everybody, welcome to episode 10 of Muscle Owl Talks. Real kind of, special episode today because it's just me and Michaela. Usually we have four of us discussing. It used to be Muscle Owl Debates, so there was, real chat going on. This episode 10, we're going to just do very quickly SMA Awareness Month. What's SMA? What different types of the conditions? What charities are there? What communities and organisations are there out there? Because as we know, we cover all types of muscular dystrophies and disability in general. And SMA, Spinal Muscular Atrophy, muscular dystrophy, is the muscular dystrophy that Michaela, our co-host, our co-editor, has. So since it's August, or SMA Awareness Month, it doesn't have a day or a week, a whole month. So we thought we'd designate a show to it, as we're going to do later on with many more different types of muscular dystrophy. So yeah, I thought it would be really good if we just did a very quick show to say SMA. What is it for people who maybe they're Duchenne families? Maybe there's families whose children have or child has a form of congenital muscular dystrophy. Maybe there's people who've just been diagnosed with Becker or limb-girdle, maybe in as an adult. And SMA is something you hear a lot about. What is it, Michaela?
That is the ultimate question. I've not met very many people outside the community or medical professionals that actually know what SMA is. So,
because in fact, should we start? It's a muscular dystrophy. It is muscular dystrophy, but it's an atrophy.
Yeah. So the difference between, let's take Duchenne because it's the most typical example. Duchenne causes the muscle to shrink and waste. SMA also does that, but via a different pathway. The muscle itself is healthy, but the nerve, particularly anterior horn cells in the base of the spinal cord, but also in the back of the brain as well, they atrophize.
Atrophize. That sounds like something an alien would do, or if you had wars on Mars.
Yeah.
So it's not good to atrophy.
No, we don't like atrophize. It literally means to recede and die. So that we don't like atrophize.
That's almost like the opposite of dystrophize. DMD patients would like to atrophize, but SMA patients don't want to atrophize.
Yes. So we have. That's the basic idea. So because the nerve cells, they're motor neurons. So because you have motor neurons that aren't passing signals through to receptor neurons, you end up with muscle wasted. So there's varying degrees of that, and how long that happens or how severely that happens. Type 0, type 1, officially type 1, type 0 isn't really recognized so much in the UK. So they're pretty much seen as the same thing.
Okay.
Type 1
and 1 are the same thing?
More or less. Type 0 babies tend. Yeah, type 0 babies tend to live only a few weeks. Type 1 on average is 8 months. Right, that can go on up.
That's lifespan, 8 months.
Lifespan. So I know a type 1 who's almost 20. So it's not unknown to reach that life expectancy of 8 months. All of that nerve damage happens really young, and there's cases some from before birth, some just shortly after birth. I have type 2, not even thinking in a minute, I'm breathing, but
So we got 0 and 1 out of the way. They're the most severe.
Yeah, the most severe.
Which is
I have type 2. Type 2, I always think is the most varied of the types. You can have. Broad. Yeah, it is. It's really broad. I mean, you can have. There was me and my sister both diagnosed with type 2. She was much weaker in some areas than I was, and I was much weaker than her in some areas. So it flips and roundabouts. But
And if we talk about life expectancy with SMA type 2, your sister passed away at the age of 14. You are now 25. 26. Oh, who cares about ages?
So yeah,
It's not like we're discussing life expectancy or anything.
No. Well, I mean, the funny thing about type 2 is that I've known kids die before they reach the age of 10.
That's not funny.
It's not funny, but
the funny thing about type 2.
But at the same time, I know people in their 60s, 70s. It's so hard to call type 2, and for that reason, I always say we don't really have a life expectancy placed upon us. But we are acutely aware of the fact that one bad episode and you're going to go down the pan. So with me, my symptoms were showing from in and around 6 months. I had reflexes right up until I was 8 months. And that's how they normally would diagnose type 2 back in those days. They would look for the reflex in the muscle. And it's estimated about 90% of cases in SMA, the reflexes aren't there anymore once the damage has been done. So that's what happened to me, but we can range from being able to stand for a short period of time with support to never being able to sit unaided at all. Those are the two extremes. We all have some form of respiratory involvement. And yeah, it's a mixed bag. It's about management at that point, managing the protocol that you need to. And there's lovely protocols out in the US that really help. Which then brings you on to type 3, which...
So 1 and 0, very severe, only usually live a few months, a couple of years. Type 2, very broad, very far-ranging. And now if we move on to type 3, what does type 3 mean?
Type 3, I would term as one of the least severe. Not the least severe, but certainly one of the least lesser ones. Most type 3s will be able to walk in some shape or form. Again, the funny thing is,
in fact, if we say, because if people are from the DMD community, comparing it, whatever, you, type 2, you could never walk. And that's
I never so much as stood, really. So if you think of the big difference between SMA and like DMD or limb-girdle, and certainly in some cases limb-girdle, the damage happens very quickly. It doesn't take a long time for it to happen. Type 0 babies, it all happens in the womb. Type 1 babies, it happens within the first few weeks of life, outside of the womb after delivery. With me, it happened within the first 3 to 6 months. So that's type 0, 1, and 2, all very, very quickly. But with type 3, it takes until about 3 or 4 years of age before you really start to notice the symptoms. It's not something that I see very much. I would say the vast majority of SMA patients are type 1. There's maybe 30 or 40% of us are type 2. But because there's so many of us with type 2, we live longer. And it makes us look like the dominant population, but unfortunately we're not. But type 3s are generally diagnosed after 3 years of age. They can walk, or at the very least stand. Their upper limbs are much stronger. They might have some respiratory involvement, but generally speaking, they're very, very strong. Most type 3s that I know have ended up like a type 2, so they look like me in their later life, but they start out pretty strong. And that's...
Would you say type 3 SMA is more similar to, maybe if we're thinking DMD, limb-girdle, it's only noticeable maybe a few years in to the person's life? Maybe we could say that it doesn't progress, or people don't deteriorate, muscles don't deteriorate quite as quickly, maybe, as in DMD patients. Is that correct? Could you have an SMA patient walking?
I would say that I've always, I mean, doctors might think differently on this, but I've always associated the progression in SMA to weight gain. So I wouldn't say that my function is any different than what it was when I was 6, but I've got bigger and I've got heavier. I put weight on, I've lost weight, and I notice that as my weight goes up and down, my strength increases and decreases. So really, really, really prevalent in type 3 is that once they hit the age of 13, 14, and they're starting to get bigger and heavier and they're really going through a growth spurt, that's when all the damage seems to happen. With SMA, and I suppose the same with Duchenne, the general rule is if you don't use it, you'll lose it. You've got to push yourself to do whatever you can independently and then let someone else take over rather than letting someone else take over to freeze. Or you absolutely, without a doubt, will lose that more on your own. And that's where all the therapies so far have been targeted at maintaining the strength that you've got. And certainly with type 3, I think, the taller people are, the weaker they get as time goes on. So that's a big thing. There might be some element of weakening in it in terms of the muscles shrinking slightly, but most of the time I would associate it with weight gain or having your mass.
I think it seems to be certainly different in the way that we associate limb-girdle, Duchenne muscular dystrophy with a deterioration of muscles, so that you are, usually speaking, weaker tomorrow than you were yesterday and weaker next week than you will be tomorrow. Whereas it often seems in SMA, certainly SMA type 2, as you say, you're not specifically weaker than you were when you were 6 years old, but it's more sort of many other problems, like, for example, your lungs, your breathing. You have issues that are closely aligned to cystic fibrosis, for example. You have a collapsed lung that people don't know about. There's these things like this that I think it's different from DMD in those ways, but actually similar in the ways that because of these other things, you have to use a BiPAP at night. It's a breathing machine. You use things like feeding tube and peg tube, all these other things. So I mean, do you feel if we say that those are the different types, do you feel I don't know, do you feel there's a strong affinity between all the muscular dystrophies? Because I kind of feel like SMA is something that is so broad, it sort of overlaps onto many of the others in terms of how it affects you, sort of the similarities in condition.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. I think I feel an affinity with so many of them. SMA symptoms can be so broad. Some of us have heart problems. They're still investigating how closely linked that is to SMA. But certainly the more pressure the lungs are under, the more pressure the heart is under, and that's certainly something that we've noticed, or certainly I've noticed, that more people are showing problems that way. But generally speaking, everybody with muscular dystrophy, no matter what type or any neuromuscular or muscle wasting condition, are all within the same boat. We all have, generally speaking, the same problems to deal with. SMA broadly is defined as a condition that affects any muscle that's attached to the skeleton. So all the skeletal muscles will be affected. So that's like the neck, the back, the arms, the legs, the torso, especially in the ribs.
In fact, also, I'll just come in there. That is something that's, again, very much aligned to DMD. If we talk about DMD, that's something that it's all the voluntary muscles. Whereas if you talk about limb-girdle muscular dystrophy, it's mainly the limbs and hips, around there. So, SMA, as you say, mainly all the voluntary muscles.
Yeah, so I mean, it's very rarely that it's an involuntary muscle that's involved there. I mean,
still all, mainly all the muscles. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing.
That's still a lot.
SMA has a really weird way of showing itself sometimes, and you're never quite sure what's going to happen next. But that's the same with any other neuromuscular condition. They're all somewhat predictable, but equally somewhat unpredictable. We can predict what's going to happen to somebody with any type of SMA. but likewise, we can not really predict the unknown things that we find as people live longer. So that's the likes of my pancreas giving up. I'm finding some evidence that that's a thing with SMA. That's an unknown symptom that is just thrown up as people are able to live into the advanced stages. I certainly wouldn't be alive now if it wasn't for the technology that's there. And I think the same goes for Duchenne, and the same goes for Becker, and all those other ones. So it's an exciting time to be part of the community. I think it's amazing to see so many type 1 children living full and active lives, going to school and going to mainstream school, even though they're unable to talk. All these things are incredible advances that we're seeing more and more of, and may continue. I think we're all in the same boat together. We just have a different label on top of our condition, but at the end of the day, we have the same challenges to face, and the same technology that helps me will hopefully help others. And if we look at Duchenne and the research in Duchenne, exon skipping in turn will help SMA. SMA exon skipping in SMA will help skip one exon. It's only the one exon that's affected. It's one base pair within the DNA that causes SMA. One substitution, and that causes the SMN gene. And as time wears on, we're hopeful that will fix that. And
in fact, much more to come in terms of talking about SMA research on our brand new show, Muscle Our Science, which, although we've had Muscle Our Science as a page for a long time and many animations for all the news stories, this is a brand new show that will be coming about. And in fact, I think it's planned for our second episode is going to be on one of the big new SMA drugs, which, as you said, Michaela, I mean, we're seeing huge progressions for the Duchenne community, but the SMA community right now has a drug which apparently could well be, we don't use the C word, but it's a very good treatment, you know. So I don't know. Let's say no more.
Let's keep that under wraps.
But that's definitely like Muscle Owl. Follow Muscle Owl, and we'll be putting it through there, also through our Muscle Owl Science page really soon. Maybe let's finish on, because I will be putting this question to a few of our friends who have DMD. My brother who has DMD, although as we know, my brother likes to do his own thing, you know, not talk too much about DMD. So that's why I end up coming on, you know, doing my thing, swinging the bat. So, yeah, I think when it's DMD day, in a few weeks' time, I'll certainly be asking questions, because I know that there's a huge community. The parents just been diagnosed and they're told this, that, the other, and then they go on and they see other parents who've maybe only been diagnosed, you know, with the condition 3 or 4 years ago and are still at the very, very beginnings of understanding the condition. So there's lots of hearsay, lots of stuff that goes around. I'll definitely be putting it to a lot of people who've lived with DMD for 20, 30 years, you know, to say, what would you say? You know, so let's say for the SMA community, if, you know, if someone's child has been diagnosed with SMA type 2 today, or type 1 and 3 as well, but, you know, if they could have a hotline to Michaela, what would Michaela be able to say, hey, you know, hold on a minute, you know, this is how it really is?
Yeah, I think I can only really speak with authority on type 2, but I do want to touch on type 1 and type 0. Certainly in the US, if you're in the US, there's the expanded access programs for listeners. So go out, check it out. It might not be for you, but be aware of your options. And in a sense, the same stands for type 2, type 3, or even adult onset, where you don't get diagnosed to you're an adult. There are always options, and there is always choice. I've always chosen to go down the hardline way of life matters. You may choose to choose hospice, especially if you're a type 0 or a type 1 child, or you may do the same as what I did and what my family did for me, and push down the let's get the medical interventions in here route, and no answer is the right answer. SMA is painted as a real death sentence, and if you go on Google and if you're watching this, you probably Googled it, you will have heard the number one genetic killer of children under 2. And while that statistic may be correct, there are exceptions to that, and increasingly more exceptions to that. Don't believe everything you read on the internet, but do go and talk to doctors. Do go and talk to the leaders in the scientific world. I'm not naming them because it would take me too long. But certainly in the UK, there's a lot of leading specialists in the UK, and there's a lot of leading specialists out in the States that can really help you. Go and talk to them, and they're an open book. But at the end of the day, a disability like SMA may well be severe, but it is certainly not without its options to keep things open and take each day as it comes. There's no point in worrying about the next day when it hasn't happened yet.
One of our more serious episodes, in fact. So, because if this is your first time watching, subscribe. We have 50 podcast episodes that are on iTunes from the last 18 months. This is a new series that we started, Muscle Owl Talks. It's essentially the same. Me and Michaela and our good friends Solomon, Vivek, Sarah, Zoe, many more. And we always have guests on. So this is just a video series of what was our old podcast. It's continued. And like I say, if you're interested in science and scientific research, that's a new thing that we'll be having too. One thing I will say, we do usually have it a lot more lighthearted, but I thought today, just a really quick, well, in fact, it's not even been a quick episode, normal episode timing, but a very wholesome view of SMA muscular dystrophy, because I thought, my brother has Duchenne muscular dystrophy, if this is your first time watching, and I always feel that it's important that you understand different types as well, because you see different communities behaving in different ways, and it's always very interesting too. But what I will say, usually we're a bit more light-hearted, and we talk about disability in quite a fun way. In fact, I'll say... I was going to say, I was with Michaela at the weekend, so you might have seen some of our crazy antics over in Northern Ireland. In fact, what I do still have is that pillow that we were going past.
Nice in the background, you can't see it.
We were doing some fundraising, and we went past the shop. And someone went, look, it's owls. Obviously, it has the crazy, nice ears. But I just looked, and it was reduced. So I thought I'd get a couple. Michaela's got one too. So yeah, a bit of fun. We're all about the owls. We're all about the muscle owls.
But yeah, let's end on a really interesting topic, shall we? If you have SMA, and this is one for all the type 1, type 0 families out there especially, if you have SMA, you're genetically predisposed to have a higher IQ.
That's what Michaela's always talking about. Yeah, if you've got SMA and you're clever, it's not because you're a hard worker or anything else, or that
it's because your muscles are rubbish.
It's just because your genes genetically, a lot of your brain waves are doing crazy things. That's apparently the theory of SMA.
People always ask, if I'm right, and someone says, where do you get your brains from? I go, Mum and Dad, but they also give me SMA when they're at it, so...
I like that. A good joke to finish on, I think. This video episode is out tonight. We're actually doing Muscle Owl Month at the moment, which there'll be a whole lot of crazy fundraising things happening later in the month, our month, not the actual. We don't work with the Gregorian calendar. This is going the 20th to the 20th. We're going wild, and probably onwards, a continuation from there on. But yes, as we say, make sure you check us out. And it's been I'm really pleased that we've done an introductory episode on SMA muscular dystrophy. Obviously something we talk about a lot anyway, but for all those who didn't know, and we'll be doing more on Duchenne obviously very soon, congenital muscular dystrophy, which we think we're going to actually have to invent a day, an awareness day for that, because there doesn't appear to be one, and limb girdle muscular dystrophy, which is towards the end of September, although obviously many more too. We can't name them all, there's 60. But
Don't forget, yeah. Don't
do you want to
forget
finish this off, Michaela?
No, it's not. If you've got a question about them and we can answer it, maybe. Maybe there's a myth you've heard. Let us know.
Do that.
And
we'll see you
try
soon.
to.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.